What's up, YouTube? This is Carl, No Coast Fab, and today we're finally gonna build the mini tubs and the trunk pan for the Nova. So we got a lot to do. Let's get to it. Here's the trunk we cut out. You can see it's all cheddared out. Just all over. Up here. There's some more there. There's, I don't know. There's probably more somewhere. There. It's rough. It's not in good shape. So I think we're gonna try and do this mostly in one piece. So we'll just get a full measurement from there all the way around to there. We'll cut it a little big so we can trim to fit later. We'll do this bend, this bend, this bend, and that roll, that bend at the bottom. We'll do it all in one piece, and then we'll just make the corners. We could just do them square, and that would be fine. This is all gonna get covered in carpet, so it's not a big deal. But I'm probably gonna make them, I'll hammer out a couple corners. I'll show you how to do that with a, you know, a planishing hammer. There we go. Now, this would normally be pretty simple. We'll do some bead rolling in here just to make it look nice, because, I mean, nobody's ever gonna see it, so why not? The only tricky part is gonna be this. It has, get up in there. It has this belly in it right here. See, that's about, I don't know, 5/8 or 3/4 of an inch. And that's gonna need to be back in there again, because these guys here are where your fuel tank rests. So your straps would be, wrap it around the tank right there to hold things together. So what I'm hoping is we can get a little bit of stretch out of the sides right here. We'll do this top lip in a separate piece. I mean, we don't need to, we could do it square, but this needs to look nice, or we're gonna make it look nice. So I'm hoping I can put a little bit of stretch in it right here to create that little bit of a belly. If not, worst case scenario, we'll give her a small slice, put the bend in there, weld in a couple little pieces. So I'm gonna pull some measurements on this, like the spacing on those, where they sit, if they're centered. I don't know, I'll measure some other stuff just so I feel good about it. And we'll get to it. So I've got a piece sheared off. I got center marks on it. I like to lay out off center marks rather than using the outside edges, just in case the cuts aren't square. I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time on the trunk with you guys. I'll hit the highlights. Like when I'm done with this, I'll show you the layout, maybe give you some pointers to keep things clear and make it a little easier on you when you do your stuff. But other than that, maybe we'll hit some bead rolling and then move on to the mini tubs. There's a lot more work in the mini tubs, and I want to try and fit this all in one video. So we'll hit this layout real quick and then move on. All right, here we have the layout. And I'm gonna tell you, when you're laying out a panel, lay out everything, whether you need it or not. Like everything start to finish, lay it out. If it's on the panel, it's gonna force you to think about it, and you might foresee problems that have come up after, like, and mark it clearly. Like, make sure you can see how busy these get, how fast they get busy. Like, make sure everything is marked clearly so that you know exactly what it is, because there's nothing worse than getting a ways into a panel and then following the wrong line for a cut, or catching the wrong line with a bead roller, or anything like that. So, and then also on your bend lines, you got to think when you're bending this, are you adding a radius? Are you taking away a radius? If you're doing like a sharp bend, are you accounting for your the thickness of your material? Like this is where our tank supports are going to sit. This actually isn't even the right side. Those don't even matter. because they actually need to be marked on the bottom. But where we're bead rolling, I need to know where those are so that we don't run a bead across one of those and mess with our fitment afterwards. So then here's the center lines I was talking about, since I like to lay off center lines. And you can kind of see, well, is it going to show up on camera? Yeah, not really. This trunk pan's actually wider on this end than it is at that end. So at that end, we're, what was it, 33 1/4? And at this end, we're 36. So it's a little swole on this side. But I'm gonna knock these corners out real quick, do some bead rolling. We'll do a quick bend, and then yeah, we'll make this pretty. All right, so you just watched me break everything with my lovely assistant. And this is a shrinker and a stretcher, so I'm just shrinking that edge. You'll see that curve over as it goes. These are just Harbor Freight guys, and they actually work pretty decent, so don't be afraid to go pick up a pair. And then this one's just gonna stretch out the other side. Need a tiny bit on that bend. Okay, here's where we're at now. See, bead rollings in there. We did nice radius bends, sharper bend on the front. Started adding more cut lines where they need cut. Here's the piece that you guys just saw me shrinking and stretching. And it fits right in on that. I'll have to make the corners up there. You can see that fits in there pretty nice. So that guy, I just kind of have a line in there. We'll cut and trim on this. We'll weld onto that. And that'll take care of our top radius. And hopefully, this will just drop in over top of what's there. We're gonna scribe around the edge, cut out what's left in the car on that scribe line, and that'll leave us a perfect fit around the edge of this. Nice and easy to weld, all that fun stuff. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna get this cut down. I'll probably just go ahead and get that welded in. I'll get these corners made. I'll finish trimming everything. And then we'll drop it in. I'll kind of, if there's anything else I need to go over, I'll go over that with you. Anything I can come up with or think of that I missed. And then we'll move on to mini tubs. All right, quick update on the trunk. I started hammering out round corners for that, and I didn't like it. I think that's what I started. I started just kind of divoting that corner in, or concaving it to fit it in there. I didn't like the way it was coming, so we're not gonna do the planishing hammer thing. It looks better just doing miters. So we're just gonna miter this thing together on the corners. That one's already done. I had to do a relief here to fit the die for the brake, to put that radius in, because this has radiuses top and bottom. And then we got that top one trimmed out, welded in, and just kind of rough ground in right now. But this is where we're at with this. So I'll finish up these two corners. We'll drop it in the trunk, make sure everything clears, fits. Also, on the gas tank supports, those guys, I'm changing my plan on that a little bit too. Remember I said we were gonna do a little stretching right here to put a divot or a slight bend, a slight arc in the bottom of that. Well, I got looking. I don't know how well this is gonna show up. Well, maybe it shows up a little bit. That bend is at the front of the tank, so it doesn't interfere with the tank at all. So that might have bumped up the clearance from the ground to the bottom of the tank by that much. And I'm not gonna worry about it. So instead, I'm just gonna, I might even just put a little heat to it right here and straighten that out. We'll just run this flat. It'll just be a little easier, a little less work. And that way we don't have a weird shape covering up our bead rolling. So I'll get this finished up. I'll probably get those welded onto the bottom. I'll drop it in the car. I'll show you real quick and then we'll start cutting out tubs. All right, guys, trunk's done, ready to weld in. Onto the main tubs. We had a special delivery last night. This is what was on there before. And this is what is gonna go on there now. Oh man, noisy. So, I'm actually a little worried. These are big. Hope they fit. So, if you remember, I kind of talked a little bit in a different video about how the tubs are different sizes or different shapes. And I didn't want to just extend them in because I thought it would look weird. So after taking a couple days to think about it, here's what I came up with. So this tub has this extra for the gas filler that runs inside of this, for the gas filler neck, where this tub is just nice and round. And I don't know how I'm gonna do this. The other one actually ends right there, so this one's longer too. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this up in here. And I'm gonna run a flat plate forward, like a filler panel, up to whatever's gonna match that tub over there. And that way, where they protrude in to the trunk, they'll both match and they'll both be the same. And then to fix that weird little spot where we have that filler, I'm gonna cut a filler panel for the side of the trunk. And then we'll do some bead rolling in it and everything else. It'll finish out the trunk a lot better. It'll give it a better look, and it fixes our problem with the tubs being different. So I'm gonna start laying out, cutting. God, I'm gonna cut all this shit out. So let me get going on that, and then I'll bring you in after it's all opened up and we can go over some more stuff. Guys, we have catastrophic problems. It looks good here. If you remember, when we narrowed this 9-inch, we figured the difference in offset. We narrowed for the difference in offset. And I was a little worried because I've had this happen before with wheels. It's not quite what it should be. So we took an extra 1/2 inch per side, so 1 inch total off the axle. It wasn't enough. These are too tight. too tight. We'll get a stand back. See how they look anyways. There's no weight on the rear end right now. So they'll tuck better than that afterwards. We just rough cut everything, get shit out of the way. We got plenty of room in here by the time we get that knocked out. We got plenty of room there. And this side, we have the same thing. Look how tight that is. So, we waited a little over 2 weeks for those shafts. It's not gonna work. I think what we're gonna do is I'm gonna blow the tires off of it. I'm gonna pull those shafts. We'll see how much spline we have not engaged. I want to say there's going to be probably 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to check that. Whatever there is that we can slide those shafts in further, we'll cut it off the end of the shaft. Cut this axle one more time, narrow it up again, and get on with our life. But that just, man, what a kick in the nuts. That sucks. Here's those tubs. So, here's the driver's side with that weird shape I've been yapping about. Here's the passenger side. It has a nice shape. If we line them up, you can see how much difference there really is in what I've been talking about. It's a little easier to show now. They're out here on the floor. So, we'll make 2 tubs this size. There'll be a filler that'll go in there, and that should take care of that. And we cut it. There's the reason for this being all weird. That thing. We cut this with just barely enough room to sneak by this. So we'll plate that in, fill that little hole, then our tubs will match on both sides. And I'm gonna break out the whiskey is what I'm gonna do. And get busy cutting this apart and re-narrowing again, and hopefully we can do this and still somewhat stick to our schedule. Okay, let's go over why I'm an idiot. I went through trying to figure out what the hell went wrong, why we were too wide, and the rear end's narrowed. They're back in. Where are you? There. And there. We're all good. Let me flip the camera around and show you what happened. Grab a tape measure here. And walk over here. So when I measured this first time, get that in there. Right there. I threw a tape on there and saw that, and I was like, oh, cool, 8-inch wheel. Turns out it's 7. I'm an idiot. 8-inch wheel should have been 9 inches. Don't know what happened there. So we're all narrowed back up. We gained about 3/4 on both sides. Our gap is way more better now. See, we lost our 3/4 there, but that's fine because I'm just gonna notch that frame and bring it in further anyways. But we're all good. So this just goes to show that when you're doing something like this, double check everything, even if you think that you're 100% sure. Check it anyways, because don't be a dumbass like I just was. So either way, I'll recut it, pop those back together, got it back under here. we're back to where we were like, I don't know, hours ago. And now we can move on with some tin work. So that's where, that's what it was. That's what it was. God, dumb, so dumb. So on these frame rails, on these Novas, they taper. They kind of kick out as they come back. So, see, there's our edge. We're basically splitting this in half at this end. And then up there, where the front of the tire is going to be, we're down to nothing. So you can kind of see here, I just roughed everything out. But by the time we get to right here, we're back to a factory width. So I'll just split that straight down. We'll use 1/8 inch. We'll plate all of this back in after we get that frame section cut out. We'll get that all welded in, buttoned up, and nice. And we'll move into the tub. So if you need to do one of these, I know the reason I'm bringing this up is because a couple of the kits that I looked at, man, they had you notching this whole thing halfway, and they were coming out and taking all this, and it was a lot more work than it really needed to be. If you're going wider than a 295, then maybe you would, but where that's a tapered rail, you're still not gonna be that deep. So I was gonna try and get some more like time-lapse type stuff, but there's just no good place to put the cameras. So bear with me, guys. I'm gonna do this, and I'll just keep giving you small tidbits as we go. Okay, so I got this ground back to my cut lines. Now we just need to clean up the edges for welding. You can see the taper in here. I have that plate cut and tacked in just to check it. I can show you what I meant by that taper. We have about exactly 1 inch right there. If we come around to this side, there's my other tape measure. No wonder I can never find a tape measure. I just leave them wherever. We have 1.5 inches, and you can see this is where that plate comes up to. So we took nothing out here. You can see how much we took out back there. So something to be aware of when you're tubbing, that these aren't always, like your rails aren't always going to be parallel and straight and square. So you need to check them before you go cutting. All right, we got both plates fitted and welded in. I left this corner open. It's not done yet. I want to get the tubs fitted to make sure that that's where that needs to be before I do anything else. We got the tubs cut. I just clamped them together and ground them so that they're both perfect with each other. I just took an old tub, threw it on there. Well, the tub I wanted to use, so the passenger side tub, threw it on there, traced it out, cut it out. Now we're gonna do a radius edge on these. So we'll grab our radius dies for the bead roller. There's the inverse of it. You can see it'll form half of our edge. So what we'll do is I'll come in here, I'll bead roll whatever pattern I decide on here, and then I'll roll that edge all the way around. And you can do this if you don't have a bead roller. So find a piece of pipe, tube, whatever, with any sort of bend in it, really. And you can hammer that edge over and get the same effect. You'll definitely want a shrinker and stretcher setup though, because when you roll that, it's going to taco, it's going to do that. And you'll either have to shrink or stretch that edge to bring it back down flat. So then we'll cut that strip for the width that it needs to be. And we'll roll the edge on that too. And then this weld for our final roll will actually be right up the center of that radius. So let me, I'm gonna lay this out, hurry and bead roll it. I'm gonna get both edges knocked out, weld it up, and we'll get them stuffed in the car. So I figure I'd show you on these insides, if you gotta do a mark inside of it, the fastest way is to go through, determine whatever you want it to be, put a mark. And I'll normally do like my first mark and then a couple of reference marks. Then take your Sharpie, get a glove so you don't cut yourself, and set your finger on that edge to where it's comfortable. And then just drag around that edge. And you end up nearly perfect every time. Just a quick way. Just a quick way to do that. I mean, straight edges, curved edges, doesn't matter. I use it a lot for curved edges just because they can be a pain to lay out if you don't. So you can see, we rolled that edge. And like I said, it did one of those. So it's not ruined, it's still good. I'm just gonna work this edge now. And the shrinker, get in there. Oh man. I tell you, the Harbor Freight stuff isn't that bad. And then it messes with me. There we go. Oh God. Also need a bigger shop. Can't tell. So we'll just work this edge around. It's not going to take a whole lot. Kind of be careful because you can overdo this too. I mean, if you do, it's not a big deal. Just walk it over to the stretcher on the other side, undo what you did. Just kind of keep even pressure as you're going around. And there you go. That's one time around. I'll have to go through. See, we still have a little wobble right here. We'll do a little more shrinking right here. And that'll pull this center up, push those edges down. Do a little more shrinking right here. It'll pull this up, push those down, and that should have it pretty flat. But just keep working it around. You'll eventually end up with a perfectly flat inner wheel top. All right, we're all rolled up. We got our piece fitted. We got it all tacked together. So let's talk about welding sheet metal. A lot of people get scared when it comes to welding sheet metal. Just, it's so easy to warp, it's so easy to blow through. A lot of stuff can go bad, and it can all go bad pretty quick. So some easy pointers that a lot of people don't talk about, but you should know. Make sure your lens is clean. If you can't see what you're doing, you're not gonna lay it pretty well. A lot of people, like, their lenses are just, you can't see nothing through them. And then they can't figure out why they're having problems with their welds. Well, if you can't see what's going on with your weld, you're never gonna put down a good weld. You can see, I TIG welded a shade 8. A lot of other mistakes that people make is they're using too dark a lens for what they're doing. You see guys trying to weld sheet metal together, or TIG or whatever, with like a shade 13. It's so dark, you're blocking all that light, your eyes are gonna be fine. But you can't see what you're doing. You can't see your line that you're welding up. You can't see what your puddle's doing. A lot of times, poor welding is caused by not being able to see what you're doing. Lighten up your lens, you're gonna be fine. You're not gonna burn your eyes by going too light. Well, I should go way too light, like 8. I don't think I'd go any lighter than 8, but that's something else you can watch for. So I use just a 3/32 gray tungsten when I'm TIG welding. I use it for about everything. I use it for steel, I use it for aluminum. It's kind of a good all around. Another good all around tungsten is gonna be your purple. It'll do both. It'll do steel, it'll also do aluminum. You can get into your reds for steel. They won't do aluminum. You can go to your greens, which will do aluminum, but they won't do steel. And if you're running an inverter style machine, you cannot run pure tungsten. You cannot run green in those. So it's also going to depend on the machine you have. Something else, if you're doing aluminum, your gloves need to be clean. If your gloves aren't clean, when you start feeding that rod, whatever oil and dirt and everything else is on your gloves, you're rubbing it into the rod and it's going to cause problems with your puddle. Steel's not as picky. Like, I kind of wipe these off with some thinner. They look dirty, but they're pretty clean. Well, clean enough. If we were doing aluminum, I have a different set of gloves that I keep for aluminum that are clean. So, fitment. Your fitment is your most important thing when it comes to warping. You can see how our fit is all the way through this. We're a little gappy right there. That's our only spot. The reason your fitment is so important is if you have to fill a gap, you have to slow down. You're putting more heat in that area, you're gonna cause more warpage. So your fitment is gonna be 90% of your end result when it comes to warpage on sheet metal. Make sure your fit is tight. Now I'm gonna say something that not a lot of people say when it comes to sheet metal. You might have heard, some of you might just call me crazy. I don't go through and spot weld and then come back and spot weld and spot weld and spot weld. And I don't run around in circles like that. My favorite saying is equal heat equals equal cooling. So I will start at one end. As long as my fit is good, I will start at one end and I will keep my heat, my speed, and my weld consistent. And I will weld this in one shot with as few stops as I can from one end to the other. What that's gonna do, you're gonna heat it up. The heat's gonna stay consistent. You're gonna carry it all the way through. And behind you, it is also gonna cool consistently and keep your warping to a minimum. So, as far as rod, I just sharpened the hell out of 3/32 tungsten. And I use an 030 or an 035 filler rod for sheet metal. You want to try and match your filler to whatever it is you're welding. And then of course, the Fronius welder back there. So, and that thing, that's the Cadillac welders. So I might be cheating there a little bit, but maybe that'll help you. Maybe that's some tips you haven't heard before. The only other one I can think of is if you're TIG welding, your goal is 100% penetration. So you also need to make sure you clean the backside of all of your welds, because if there's junk on the back, it'll pull to the front. You can end up with porosity and other issues. So I hope this helps you guys. I'm gonna hurry and buzz this out. This is probably gonna be seen. It's not gonna be carpeted or anything. So we are gonna 100% metal finish this down to Scotch-Brite. So, I mean,
We can either metal finish it that nice, or we could just blast it together, throw some Bondo on it, paint it. But you're always gonna feel better about your project if it's just perfect ahead of time. And once you get practiced up a little bit, it doesn't take any longer to get your metal right than it does to go through and do filler and all that other dusty, nasty, stinky body shop stuff. So, all right, I'm out. I'm gonna weld this up.
Got it all welded up. You can see our heat pattern stays consistent through the whole thing. One little bobble there, but I think it had to stop there for some reason. And you can see it's not warped anywhere. Now, a lot of this isn't going to be because those edges are rolled, so it's going to be a little stronger than if we were doing like a flat panel. But we have zero warpage all the way around this. So I use a filler rod when I weld it, anytime I weld sheet metal, just so that I have that buildup for when it comes to metal finishing. So when I work this down smooth, there won't be any divots that you would have with metal finish or fusing, excuse me. So now our steps are going to be, we'll take this guy, we'll knock this off with like an 80 grit. We'll get it down flat. Then we'll hit it with a roll lock and a red Scotch-Brite to take any of those scratches out. Then we'll grab the DA, we'll go over this entire thing, and then we'll just Scotch-Brite it out nice after that. This stuff is nothing to worry about. If anything, we might end up using a little vinegar when we Scotch-Brite this, and that'll all go away. So there we are. So I'll get this finished up and then show you what we got. All right, so I knocked off that weld and then sanded it with 80, 120, and this is just the last round of Scotch-Brite on it. I screwed up and I wasn't recording when I thought I was recording, so I kind of missed it. Sorry guys, but we'll get this rubbed down real quick and I'll show you what kind of finish you can get when you do it this way. So this whole process, start to finish, like from the time I started knocking down the weld to this point has been about 15 minutes. So let me bring you in a little closer and I'll show you the finish we got. Okay, so here's what we started with. Our flat panel that we rolled, kind of a chingered up piece. And here's where we finished. So if we were going to paint, maybe 2 coats of primer, and this would be sweet. Where it's a race car, I'm not going to get too much further than that. He's not taking it to shows, so if it was going to be a show car, probably another half hour to an hour to go through and just pick at these little tiny spots just with a hammer and dolly. And then this would just be mirror, but I mean, you can see for about 12 to 15 minutes worth of finish work, that's where we're at. So we're gonna call it here. We're already getting long-winded. I'm doing this on my phone, so I'm not sure if this is even gonna upload. My phone might not have enough to do it. So I'm gonna finish up this other one. I'll set this one off to the side. Next video on the Nova, we'll get these in. We'll get that finished up. We'll get it put in. We'll get calipers, everything else on, bleed the brakes, and we'll do a shakedown run on this and send her out the door. So until next time.